All right, so this weekend I went with my family to see K-pop Demon Hunters sing along on the big screen. It was amazing. K-pop Demon Hunters is huge in my house. My two daughters love it. But I want to talk about this soundtrack in terms of music history because it's breaking all sorts of records, and I think it's going to continue to do interesting things. If you haven't seen, a bunch of the songs from the soundtrack of this movie are in the Billboard Top 10, and it's the biggest soundtrack since the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack in 1978. So what's interesting to me when thinking about those two soundtracks specifically is that the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack then went on to win Album of the Year at the Grammys. And given that last year I spent months of my life making this very exhaustive series on the history of the Grammys that nobody watched, I am still thinking about things, especially pop music, in terms of Grammys. So I'm wondering if K-pop Demon Hunters could win Album of the Year at the Grammys. So only 3 movie soundtracks have ever won Album of the Year. The first Album of the Year winner ever was a TV soundtrack. It was the soundtrack to Peter Gunn. But for movies, it's only been Saturday Night Fever, The Bodyguard, and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I think the last one to even be nominated was the Black Panther soundtrack in 2019. But if this won, this would be the first time that a soundtrack featuring mostly fictional bands would win. Even though the Soggy Bottom Boys were a fictional band in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It's not like they were the dominant band on the soundtrack. Like, that soundtrack was such a phenomenon because of real Americana musicians that people kind of discovered and fell in love with, like Alison Krauss and old songs. It wasn't necessarily like we love the Soggy Bottom Boys and we want all their songs. And the Whitney Houston's character in The Bodyguard was a singer, but on the album she's credited as Whitney Houston, like not her character's name. And Saturday Night Fever was mostly Bee Gees, but it's not like the movie was about a band that the Bee Gees played or something. So this is such a unique thing. It's a movie about 2 fictional groups, and the songs that were written for those fictional groups, even though they're sung by real people, like on the soundtrack it says Huntrix, like we're listening to Huntrix and Saja Boys, and that has never happened. So not only would it be a soundtrack which hasn't won in 20 plus years, not only would it be a fictional band which hasn't really ever happened, but it would also be K-pop, and K-pop has never won any of the big 4 awards at the Grammys. They've barely even been nominated for anything. The movie, if you haven't seen it, I think is legitimately a good movie, and I think it pulls off something that's so hard to do in movies. When you're making a movie about fictional bands and then you have to write songs and you have to make the viewer believe that these songs would be hits in real life. It's hard to do because that means you have to also write a hit song. And somehow the people that made this movie did it. They wrote like 8 legitimate hit songs. They wrote songs that are so catchy you believe people would give their souls to demons for. An amazing achievement. So I do think at the very least it's going to be nominated for Album of the Year at the Grammys. And will it win? I don't know. Fascinating to think about.